So before I share with you what Pastor Chris had to say, here's what we have from the news.
My first preference was always the path of diplomacy, yet the regime continued their relentless quest for nuclear weapons and rejected every attempt at an agreement. For this reason, in June, I ordered a strike on Iran's key nuclear facilities, an Operation Midnight Hammer. Those beautiful B-2 bombers performed magnificently. We totally obliterated those nuclear sites. The regime then sought to rebuild their nuclear program at a totally different location, making clear they had no intention of abandoning their pursuit of nuclear weapons. They were also rapidly building a vast stockpile of conventional ballistic missiles and would soon have had missiles that could reach the American homeland, Europe, and virtually any other place on Earth. Iran's strategy was so obvious. They wanted to produce as many missiles as possible, and they did, with the longest range possible, and they had some weapons that nobody believed they had. We just learned that out. We took them out, we took them all out, so that no one would really dare stop them. And their race for a nuclear bomb, a nuclear weapon like nobody's ever seen before. They were right at the doorstep. For years, everyone has said that Iran cannot have nuclear weapons, but in the end, those are just words if you're not willing to take action when the time comes. As I stated in my announcement of Operation Epic Fury, our objectives are very simple and clear. We are systematically dismantling the regime's ability to threaten America or project power outside of their borders. That means eliminating Iran's Navy, which is now absolutely destroyed, hurting their Air Force and their missile program at levels never seen before, and annihilating their defense industrial base. We've done all of it. Their Navy is gone, their Air Force is gone, their missiles are just about used up or beaten. Taken together, these actions will cripple Iran military, crush their ability to support terrorist proxies, and deny them the ability to build a nuclear bomb. Our armed forces have been extraordinary. There's never been anything like it militarily. Everyone is talking about it, and tonight I'm pleased to say that these core strategic objectives are nearing completion, and we are going to finish the job, and we're going to finish it very fast. We're getting very close. I want to thank our allies in the Middle East, Israel, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the UAE, Kuwait, and Bahrain. They've been great, and we will not let them get hurt or fail in any way, shape, or form.
And this is what Pastor Chris had to say.
Remember, the Bible tells us we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. I don't know what the Pope was talking about. He said that Jesus Christ doesn't answer the prayers of those who start wars.
Non si è armato, non si è difeso, non ha combattuto nessuna guerra. Ha manifestato il volto mite di Dio, che sempre rifiuta la violenza e invece di salvare se stesso si è lasciato inchiodare alla croce per abbracciare tutte le croci piantate in ogni tempo e luogo nella storia dell'umanità. Fratelli, sorelle, questo è il nostro Dio, Gesù, Re della pace, un Dio che rifiuta la guerra, che nessuno può usare per giustificare la guerra, che non ascolta la preghiera di chi fa la guerra e la rigetta dicendo: anche se moltiplicaste le preghiere, io non ascolterei. Le vostre mani grondano sangue.
What Jesus said, He and the Father are one. And He's like the Father. He said, if you have seen me, you have seen the Father. He is the will of the Father revealed. There are many wars that God told His children to start. So if you have read the Bible, you will know that starting a war is not the problem. The issue is the purpose of the war. When God sent the children of Israel to take the promised land, they were not invited peacefully. They took war to every city, to every nation. So I think he erred in that situation, because this is a very important thing. There are reasons for war, and it's always important to know what's the reason, what's the purpose of the war. When you read in the book of Ezekiel 38 and 39, two long chapters, describes for you the battle of Armageddon and what's going to happen. I probably will touch on it maybe tomorrow or the day after. What we're looking at here concerning Iran, we have to remember that it was a nation where the name of the Lord Jesus Christ was rejected by the leadership. It's not enough to be quiet. Quietness and peace are not the same. You can be quiet because you're in bondage. You can be quiet because you're hemmed in and you have no way out. And the Iranian people have long cried for deliverance, because the nation was not always the way it became. And when you put together the ideology of the now decimated leadership with possession of nuclear arsenal as they had intended to have, then you realize that was not going to be a good idea. All the nations agreed, at least mostly the Western nations, they agreed that Iran was a threat because they sponsored terrorism around the world. And they were named as the biggest sponsors of terror. Of course, I'm not ignorant of the fact that the accusers themselves are known to have sponsored terror as well. But you have to admit that a nation in which you have no rights whatsoever and calls for the annihilation of Israel because of its existence, not because they did something wrong, isn't for peace. They tried negotiations for a long time. That never worked. So it's not true that if we just talk, everything will be fine. That's some form of naivety. It's not true that as long as we talk, everything will be fine. That's to ignore the fact that there are those who always will prefer to dominate others for their own ends. Even in religion, history shows us how that those of a certain religion have fought to dominate others and spread their religion. It's happened from different religions in different quarters throughout history. It's one of the reasons you have these armed conflicts. So the current situation in Iran that calls for our attention is what I told you a few days ago, that it's being seized upon by several groups, especially the deep state, elitists, globalists. As a crisis that must be used to their advantage to control how their populations live. With sweet talks like the one from the Australian Prime Minister on rationing fuel.
Today, we're announcing the Commonwealth Government will halve the fuel excise on petrol and diesel for 3 months. The halving of the fuel excise will reduce the cost of fuel by 26.3 cents per litre. Importantly, in addition, states and territories have agreed and are finalising a proposal to ensure they won't benefit from the elevated prices that are occurring because of the GST. This is a reason for why we did this through the National Cabinet process rather than just going out there and making announcements without that necessarily being thought through appropriately. So we're working through the mechanisms with states and territories, and we'll have more to say about that in a short period of time.
So he's already planning for the next 3 months, and with the same voice with which the people were convinced to stay home, wear masks.
COVID-style restrictions, are you having a laugh?
I think we are. I think the Labor government is having a laugh, Alex. We are literally running on empty right now in this country. It is crazy. Let me just give you some background to it. A couple of weeks ago, when the fuel crisis began, the Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, and the Energy Minister said, no, look, nothing to worry about, no need to panic, don't go out there and stockpile. We have an abundance of fuel in this country. Fast forward a few weeks later, more than 500 service stations across Australia have run out of at least one type of fuel. So as you can imagine, there's a chain reaction. Farmers out in the regions are panicking because they rely on diesel not only for their own operations, but to feed the country. And now we're being told that supermarket shelves could possibly run low in the next couple of weeks, and that grocery prices are going to soar because it is going to have a huge impact on crops as well as fertiliser. I mean, it's a complete shambles. The Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, for some reason keeps assuring us we're all okay, nothing to see here. But now, the real thought bubble, possible COVID-style restrictions, would you believe, taking us back to those days, including maybe work from home mandates. Now, this is an absolute disaster for businesses because they're already still reeling from COVID-style restrictions. So many went bust. A lot of businesses didn't reopen in the CBDs, meaning cafes and restaurants are really suffering there. So that's one possible solution. The Energy Minister's also told us, minimise your travel wherever you possibly can. Well, gee, that's a bright idea. The Easter long weekend is coming up. People have travel plans. What are they supposed to do? They're also considering maybe public transport discounts. I mean, Alex, I can't even begin to tell you how shambolic this is. And our petrol prices, probably like yours, have gone through the roof. So today, state and territory leaders will come together to try and nut out a plan. But the problem is, could we see states and territories veer off by themselves and implement serious measures like what we saw in COVID? We're about to find out today.
It's an absolute Orwellian nightmare.
Same way. So you're going to have fake pump prices that are attributed to the Strait of Hormuz. Even those whose fuel never came through there now tell us that because of the Iran war, their prices have gone up. So the globalists are using it, hopefully, they're thinking it'll be to their advantage. So the longer the war lingers, the happier they are. I mean, I just told you, Australia is planning like next 3 months. No, we don't want it to stay that long.
Yes, sir.
I understand the Canadian government says the Bible is for hate speech.
This is the Conservative Justice Team. In a 35-minute meeting, the Liberal members of the Justice Committee, with the backing of the Liberal government and bloc, have just forced through the divisive and toxic Bill C-9, which takes squarely aim at religious freedom and freedom of expression. The reason the meeting was so efficient was because debate was banned. The Liberals censored debate on their censorship bill.
MP Miller stated that some biblical passages are, in his words, clearly hateful.
In Leviticus, Deuteronomy, Romans, there's other passages, there's clear hatred towards, for example, homosexuals. I don't understand how the concept of good faith could be invoked if someone were literally invoking a passage from, in this case, the Bible, but there are other religious texts that say the same thing, and somehow can't say that this is good faith. I mean, clearly there are situations in these texts where these statements are hateful. They should not be used to invoke or be a defense, and there should perhaps be discretion for prosecutors to press charges. I just want to understand what your notion of good faith is in this context, where there are clearly passages in religious texts that are clearly hateful.
So they're banning the preaching, public preaching of the Bible. Their House of Commons or something like that. They will become really common now.
Yes, sir.
So we have some things to deal with these 7 days. And by the power of the Holy Ghost, we'll put them in check. So it says, come and see the works of Adonai, the astounding deeds he has done on the earth. Next verse, to the ends of the earth, he makes wars cease. He makes wars cease. So you can go back to the King James and look at verse 9 in the King James. He maketh wars to cease unto the end of the earth. He makes wars to cease. He's able to do that. So you look at the prophetic word in verse 10, be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the heathen. I will be exalted in the earth. So there's a purpose to the Iran war. And it's got nothing to do with Trump or Netanyahu. No, there's a purpose. There's a purpose. In December 2024, I did tell you that the leadership of Iran, I told you, I said the whole leadership of Iran is done for. Yes, sir. And in connection with the absolute rejection of Jesus. You can't do that for so long and not get in trouble. It's been there for so long. That made that rejection for so long. So this was a decree from heaven. God had it. And so our prayer these 7 days of fasting is that the purpose of God be brought to a conclusion quickly in Iran. And that Satan will not take advantage of the situation. And also we're praying and having heaven dispatch angels to Iran, both for a quick conclusion and for the salvation of his people. These are two important things that we must pray about. A quick conclusion of the Father's purpose in Iran regarding this war. Invitation. We're asking for angels to move into Iran